what seemed like a terrifying monster of corpse transport. Thus, a desperate trade became a terrifying legend.
Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we are traveling back in time to the misty, treacherous mountains of Qing Dynasty China to investigate a truly terrifying legend. We're going to look at one of East Asia's most famous supernatural stories, and we are going to completely deconstruct it. Picture this. You're a lonely traveler walking along a dark, winding mountain path centuries ago. Out of the thick fog, you stumble upon the Jiangshi, the legendary hopping vampire of Chinese folklore. It's pale, its arms are stretched stiffly forward, and instead of walking, it pursues you in these eerie, synchronized, two-footed jumps. It is literally the stuff of absolute nightmares.
But what if I told you this wasn't actually a supernatural monster at all? Seriously, what if the terrifying Jiangshi is really just a fascinating mix of human biology, some middle school level physics, and honestly, an incredibly tough physical job? Today we're going to solve this mystery together by just looking at the science right in front of us.
All right, let's jump right into the history. Back in the Qing Dynasty, laborers, miners, and merchants were constantly traveling hundreds of kilometers from their homes for work. But traditional Chinese culture placed a massive importance on being buried near your ancestors to maintain harmony between the living and the dead. The catch? Geography. We're talking about incredibly steep, muddy mountain trails. Wheeled carts were completely useless on those narrow cliffs, and it definitely wasn't safe for horses. So, since normal transport was just a no-go in this rugged environment, a highly specialized and, admittedly pretty unusual solution popped up. People actually hired specialized workers to physically carry the deceased across hundreds of kilometers of dangerous terrain. These were the corpse transporters, and their unique methods would inadvertently birth a legendary monster.
To get how they pulled this off, let's do a super quick biology review. Shortly after death, the body goes through a process called rigor mortis. Basically, the body's cells just stop producing energy, and without that energy, the muscle fibers completely lock up in place. Within hours, the body essentially freezes and becomes totally stiff.
Now think about the contrast here for a second. Unlike a living person whose joints flex and sway naturally when they walk, or an unconscious person who's just totally limp, these transporters were dealing with bodies locked in these super stiff, unnatural, frozen postures. Now let me tell you, it is incredibly difficult to carry a rigid dead weight over a mountain all by yourself.
So, here is the brilliant part. These ancient transporters didn't try to fight the biology. Instead, they cleverly took that stiffness, that rigor mortis, and incorporated it directly into a highly efficient, absolutely brilliant transportation system. They literally used the body's frozen state to their advantage. Here's what that actual mechanical setup looked like. Historical accounts show us they took several of these stiff bodies and tied them upright to a single, really long bamboo pole. Then, they just hoisted that whole pole onto the shoulders of two porters. You've got one guy walking in the front and one guy walking in the back.
And this is exactly where material science comes into play. Bamboo was absolutely the perfect choice for this grueling job. It has three amazingly useful structural properties. It is phenomenally strong and can support incredibly heavy weight. It's lightweight enough for a crazy long mountain trek. And this is the real kicker for our monster myth, it is highly flexible, meaning it can bend and bounce without breaking. All right, class, grab your physics hats for a second. I want you to hypothesize what exactly happens when you suspend heavy, rigid weights from a highly flexible beam and then just start marching down a mountain. Any guesses? Let's take a look. It is all about the transfer of energy. Think about jumping on a trampoline. As these carriers step forward, their feet hit the ground, boom, creating downward force. That flexible bamboo absorbs the force by bending down, and then, boing, it naturally rebounds right back up. This continuous up and down motion sends a traveling wave of kinetic energy straight down the pole. In science, we call this rhythmic bouncing effect oscillation. It's a big word, but a super simple concept. Think of a diving board right after someone jumps off it. Wobble, wobble, wobble. Or imagine a giant slinky walking down the stairs. The carrier's footsteps essentially turned that long bamboo pole into one massive moving spring.
In class, right here is where our monster is made. Because these bodies were completely locked up from rigor mortis, they couldn't just sway loosely like laundry on a line. So when that oscillating wave of energy hit them, it launched those rigid bodies straight up and down. They acted as a single solid unit, moving in perfect, synchronized vertical jumps with every single step the porters took.
Now, to make this perfectly natural mechanical physics equation seem way spookier, we gotta look at the environment.
These transporters specifically chose to work after sunset. Why? Well, cooler nighttime temperatures slowed down decomposition, the dark mountain roads were way less crowded, and, religious customs usually preferred keeping the dead separated from everyday public life.
So put yourself back on that mountain trail from the very beginning of our explainer. It's the middle of the night, thick fog is rolling in everywhere. The absolute only light is coming from a single flickering lantern held by the porter up front. Through that mist, those dancing shadows completely mess with your perception. You don't see the thin bamboo pole in the dark. You just see these eerie silhouettes bouncing right toward you.
It's just such a perfect example of how our brains react when we're scared and can't see clearly. We are pattern-matching machines, right? But fear fills in all the missing details. The naked eyes saw hopping, stiff-armed, synchronized undead creatures. But the scientific reality? That was literally just the mechanics of oscillation, rigor mortis, and a traveling bamboo wave.
So let's look at the final equation here. When you combine the biological reality of lock joints with the physical wave mechanics of a bending bamboo pole, and then you drop it all into extremely bad nighttime visibility, you create the ultimate illusion. You literally create a vampire.
The terrifying hopping Jiangshi wasn't born from dark magic. No way. It wasn't supernatural at all. It was actually born out of intense logistical necessity, incredible human endurance, and the totally unchangeable everyday laws of physics. What looked like a monster was really just a group of hard-working porters doing an unbelievably difficult job.
So we've taken this terrifying myth and found the remarkable scientific truth hidden right inside it. I'll leave you with this final thought. If the legendary hopping vampire of China was actually just a bouncy stick, some stiff muscles, and a trick of the light, what other terrifying monsters from history are just waiting for us to uncover their science?